Hi there. Welcome to ITY TV. Today we're speaking with Alex Tilley, Head of Threat Intelligence for Asia Pacific and Japan for SecureWorks. And Alex, today I understand you're going to talk to us about how people aren't doing non-sexy cybersecurity.
Yeah. I think I've got a bit of a bee in my bonnet about we're not getting some of the basics right, and some of where sort of, as an industry, we seem to focus on the new and shiny things. When I think we sort of need to also keep in mind the old and boring things, as if you will.
So when we talk about, I guess, sexy cybersecurity, is that the media image of the guy in a hoodie with
Yeah.
fine bike, but the non-sexy stuff is the reality, isn't it? The truth, the access control and authentication, things that make it work.
Yeah, it's definitely it's the stuff that we tend to sort of forget about until we really need it. And then we realize that we've sort of let it atrophy a bit over the years because we've been, obviously everyone's very busy and there's a lot of things going on in organizations that need to be addressed. But oftentimes I think we forget the stuff that's sort of quiet and that you don't really understand that you need until you really need it.
Yes. Okay. Well, I look forward to hearing what you're going to say. But I guess let's just go back a step. So, Alex, you've been a great friend of ITY and we've talked and stuff. But for new, new viewers, who is SecureWorks and what's your experience in cybersecurity?
Yeah, so SecureWorks is part of Dell. We're part of the Dell family of companies. Michael Dell sort of owns most of us. We're privately listed on our own. We're a global MSSP and research hub. We're very big in America and the UK and EMEA. Australia, we're getting there, but yeah, definitely we've sort of been around for a long time doing this. My background, in a nutshell, is banking security, casino security, online casino security, and then federal law enforcement for the best part of a decade, where I did cybercrime operations. We did all the big breaches and all that sort of mucky stuff on the internet. So yeah, my background is long and varied, but it's always been focused on the bad things, which is why I sort of get bees in my bonnets when I see things doing not being done right, shall we say.
Yeah, so no, I look forward to hearing that then. So I guess let's start with what are some essential cybersecurity tasks that cyber professionals should be undertaking?
Yeah, well, I suppose the, the main one that I'm sort of seeing people getting bitten by, if I can use that sort of terminology, is not getting the basics of logging correct. Logging is something that we tend to set and forget. Maybe 5, 10 years ago when we implemented a system, we thought, okay, these are the correct logging fields that we're going to need, and then we never go back and revisit it until we have a bad day or something breaks. So I think that's why I sort of use the term unsexy, because logs are not sexy. Logs are just very boring, and they take up space. But if we don't revisit them every now and then and make sure that we're still, were those decisions made maybe by someone who has left the company already, were those decisions still appropriate for what we need to know as IT professionals or security professionals? Because what we see oftentimes is, if I use the example of a data breach, for instance, that seems to be pretty topical right now. I'm not sure why that is. Oftentimes, when there's a data breach, and either the incident response team, like someone like SecureWorks who does incident response, or the internal team then goes to try and obviously answer the questions, what happened, what happened, and they say, okay, well, we'll just pull those web server logs and we'll pull those VPN logs and that sort of stuff. What we see is they're like, oh wait, we're missing fields, or we actually haven't set it up to log, since we implemented this web server, say, we've then put in load balancers and WAFs and all stuff in front of it. So all of a sudden, we're not logging the actual source of the connection from the internet. All I can see here is my own load balancers. That's a very common mistake. And that can lead to a really bad day, because you're wanting to answer the question, who did this to us? And all of a sudden, the information isn't where you expected it to be, if that makes sense. So I think that's something that people get wrong a lot of times. And it's something that's not, it's not sexy, but it's something that it's not difficult to just revisit the configuration and say, okay, is this still appropriate for our business? If we had a very bad day, let's use the current situations that we seem to be going through in Australia as a good example. If we had a very bad day like those victim organizations, could we answer the questions that we need to answer? And how quickly could we answer those questions? So I think that's something that really I'm trying to get on soapboxes and scream into the storm about a lot, because it might be as simple as a half hour ticking boxes and having a meeting to decide, but it could save you so much time and anguish down the line if you do it now.
Yeah, excellent. So logging, that's brilliant. Okay, what about what would be a second essential cybersecurity thing?
My my second soapbox that I have is
Yep.
around patching, and I'm not going to talk too much about like workstation patching or internal patching. I think that's been sort of done to death a fair bit. Obviously, just do it, obviously. But I think what we tend to forget is, again, those devices that we set and forget years ago, like VPN concentrators and Citrix gateways and these types, these other types of internet facing devices that genuinely, what we see a lot of times is organizations are scared to touch them. You can't touch that VPN concentrator because if it breaks, then we can't VPN, business stops. I totally understand that. But I'm here to sort of say that the time to try and deploy patches to those devices is not when there's a critical vulnerability that comes out and you realize that you're 7 versions behind and you physically can't deploy that patch now. So I think somewhere in the middle there, understanding the business criticality, of course, but also understanding that you need to be able to respond when these unexpected things happen. And there's somewhere in the middle there is the correct answer, I think. Obviously, from my little chair here, I'd say deploy the patch within 20 minutes straight away. What are you talking about? That's. But I do understand that can be not realistic. But what I do find a lot of times is that organizations that sort of have those rigid controls and don't allow that access to happen, what they're really doing is they're giving control of their change window to the bad guy, if that makes sense. Because if you're not in control of your own destiny, as it were, then the bad threat actor will be, and that's a much worse place to be, I think, than obviously correctly managing risk and all that sort of stuff. But I think action around these things is very important.
Yes, actually, that's a very sage line. I like that. The thought that, yeah, you want to be in control of your patching, not let the bad guys be in control of when you do your patching. That's true. That's excellent. Apart from maybe, the thought that a system, like you mentioned, a VPN concentrator has to be up constantly 24 hours, are there other reasons that you think maybe these tasks, logging and patching, get overlooked?
Yeah, I think we're terrified that things won't come back from a reboot. And I think oftentimes, yeah, if like from my experience in large enterprise back when I had hair, there was definitely things that you just weren't allowed to touch, because if you touched it and it didn't come back, or if you changed the configuration and something broke, everything blows up and the business goes down, right? And I totally understand that, but it's sort of at a position now where it's like, well, yeah, you want to be in control of that asset. You've paid good money for that box, whatever it may be. You should feel confident in at least logging into it, properly change manage and all that sort of stuff, of course. But you should feel confident in logging into it and deploying a patch to it. If you don't feel confident in logging into something that you've paid 6 figures for, I'd be revisiting why it is that you keep renewing that license, if that makes sense. And again, that's easy for me to say, but it's just questions to ask, which is why I'm really grateful for the opportunity to come and talk to you today, because I want to make sure people understand you want to be in control of your own destiny around these things. Otherwise, as I said, the bad guy is.
Yeah, no, that's true. I love that line that you've said. So what other common mistakes do you think organizations are making around security basics that then cause them this, real trouble down the line? What other common mistakes might there be?
I think another big one, and maybe one of the biggest ones, is having an outdated view of multi-factor authentication. Like I think, when I was back at enterprise, and I'm sure yourself when you're a younger man, we had those lovely RSA fobs that would constantly get out of sync, and it'd just be horrendous to try and work with any sort of second factor. So maybe organizations have shied away from embracing that aspect of security, whereas now it's essential. And one thing that I'm finding as I'm talking to people, and as people go through these bad days, what they're doing now is they're saying, yeah, Tilley, my provider for whatever type of system I was buying, whatever sort of SaaS I had, or whatever sort of system I was using, didn't provide 2-factor. I got popped, so now I'm moving to a new provider that does provide 2-factor. Or we had 2-factor available to us, and we didn't want to use it because people were worried about the user experience and all these concerns, so we didn't deploy it, and now we've had a really bad day. So the authenticator apps in our phone these days, they work a lot better than they did when I was a younger man, and it was horrible. Now it's actually quite seamless. So I think that's those three things are probably the three main things that people aren't doing. They're not revisiting their logs to making sure that they're still relevant. They're not addressing their patching situation, and they're not embracing 2FA. Because as we see with these breaches today, a password is kind of a useless control. It doesn't really exist in and of itself anymore. You need extra stuff around it. That's just my opinion.
No, definitely very true. Right. I mean, all these data breaches, your passwords could be stolen, and people may have been using them on other sites. But at the very least, if they had MFA, that would at least stop people being able to get into their accounts.
100%. 100%. You sort of need to understand that password theft is a reality. It just happens, and as you're talking about reuse and not changing, that sort of stuff has made that control in and of itself, in my opinion, kind of useless. You need to be looking at sort of extra bits of control around it to protect yourself and your users and your business.
Yes. What, if I can ask, what in your opinion would be the best type of MFA protection? Because SMS, text messaging is a very common one, but then you hear stories about, the bad guys if they've got your identity, can phone the telco provider and port your number to a different thing. So I guess, I suppose, what would be, do you think is the strongest type of MFA tool you could use?
That's a really great question. It's a hard one to answer. I think things like Google Authenticator and the Microsoft Authenticator app, what I see with the Microsoft Authenticator app when they're doing that sort of challenge response with the numbers and the extra added layers of security there, I find that to be quite good. What is hard when organizations use that and all of a sudden it starts trying to re-authenticate at 2 a.m. So you have people panicking because their authentication's tried to they've got an alert, but it's just the system was cycling itself. So I think I actually, if I can maybe caveat my response to that previous question, MFA exhaustion is a thing, right? People do get complacent when they do have multi-factor authentication. And that's something that is to be aware of. So you want to make sure that you're using two-factor that is compliant and easy to use for people, so they're not rolling their eyes and just not reading what the context is of it. So a system that helps you have context around what you're being asked to do, I think is quite important, which is why I think I like so you got the Microsoft one, you got the Google Authenticator, the Salesforce one is quite good, and these are things that a lot of organizations will already have access to for free. They may just not have turned on. You might not have to pay that much for this or anything for this extra layer of security if you just investigate what you're already paying for.
Yeah, fantastic. That's a good point. Just organizations of all sizes should have a look and see what they've got now.
Most definitely, and I say that with all technology, really. It's like, we all have all these vendors that we buy from. We have these boxes and these contracts and licenses. Maybe we don't know what we do have access to, and we could be plugging a lot of these holes that we're doing a project of work to get budget for. When what if we just turned that on that box, we'd get 95% of the way there. Because as new versions come out and new functionality is released, you sort of got to keep up to date with that. And I'm totally aware that that's hard when you've got day-to-day work to try and do. I'm not sitting here saying any of this is really, really easy, but it is things to think about and investing your resources into.
Yeah, fantastic. Can I ask you about, because you mentioned, logging and patching were big hot button topics for you that drive you nuts. There's one on my mind which drives me nuts, and that's alerting. I've been in companies where, people get flooded with alerts, and because they get so many, they just set up a rule in Outlook, put them in a folder, and then later on something's broken. You go, how did you not know this? And you have a look. Oh, yeah, there was an alert. That we just ignore all the alerts. I guess what can you do there? How do you deal with making sure you get I guess you pay attention to alerts that matter and filter out alerts that don't matter? I guess, is there any best practice advice?
That's a wonderful point. Alert fatigue is also a real thing, right? And I think one thing that we tend to do, because and let me, I'll get back up on my soapbox. Security analysts can be hard to come by these days. And a lot of the metrics around security analysts, especially in the lower levels, like, level 1 SOC analysts, that sort of stuff. Pardon me for saying lower, you know what I mean? Like, a lot of their metrics are driven by ticket closure. rather than investigation, right?
Yes.
So I think if we're incentivizing people just to close tickets and move on with their day, we might not be getting that extra bit of knowledge as to what actually is happening in our systems. And we're seeing that a lot with the ransomware stuff that we're seeing at the moment, or have been seeing for the last few years, is a lot of the precursor activity will appear like commodity malware. So the SOC staff or the security analyst staff or the IT admin, whoever the case may be, their playbook is image the box, close the ticket.
Yep.
Right? But they don't know that they're at the very beginning of something that's going to be much worse. So I think, yeah, alert fatigue is a real thing, and tuning those alerts is something that I know we spend a lot of time on at SecureWorks, but it's something that is definitely needed to be done. Is rather than just say this is too much, I can't deal with it, is take the time now, another program of work, I'm giving you all these programs of work to do now, and start tuning those alerts so that you don't suffer so much alert fatigue, but also incentivize your analysts or whoever your staff may be to do a little bit more investigation than just re-image and close ticket. That's, your mileage may vary for your organization, but definitely I think giving that sort of empowerment to your staff or yourselves to do a little bit more investigation, you might be surprised what you find.
Yeah, fantastic. No, that's been fantastic, Alex. That's given some great practical things that people can be doing to audit their environment and make sure they do the non-sexy cybersecurity.
Maybe next time we'll talk about something sexy. I'll find something.
If any listeners were keen on having, I guess, some advice or some consulting or, analysis of their environment, I guess, how would they get in touch with you or with SecureWorks?
I think you can go via the website, and there's a button there that sort of says contact an analyst or get in touch with someone and have a chat, or they can hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. The picture isn't my face, but it is me. So yeah, that's an easy way to get in touch, and we'll happily help you out if you want to. And if I could also ask, maybe if your viewers would want to send in topics that they'd like to hear about, maybe we could go in the future and sort of have some discussions about, rather than me getting on my soapbox, making sure that I understand what people would like to hear about. But that's something that we could talk about. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Excellent. No, Alex, it's been wonderful as always talking to you. I appreciate that. And I love hearing, the things that make technical people passionate, and they're always the most interesting things.
Well, thanks very much for your time. I appreciate the opportunity.
Hey, thank you.